In the next series of SSIS 2012 Integration Services tutorial videos, I'm talking about one of the other Foreach Loop enumerators, which is Nodelist Enumerator. I'm Rezarat, SQL Server MVP, author and trainer. Nodelist Enumerator provides ability to loop through elements and attributes of an XML data. For example, if you consider an XML, it contains elements and attributes, so this actually provides ability to loop through that elements and attribute with actually XPath query. I will talk about that in next slide. And the input XML can be in three different types. Direct input, which you can type in your XML query or your XML content, or copy and paste it from somewhere here. This will be kind of a static loop, and it comes from a file connection, so you might have an XML file somewhere. This is kind of a loop that you can configure. For example, if you want to change the loop, you can go to that file, edit it, and change the content, so the loop will actually change each time this change in the next run actually. And it can comes from variable. If we have an XML data loaded into a variable, for example, web service task can do that. If that loads into a variable, then we can loop through that variable. Using this variables make this as a dynamic loop, because each time variable changes, then your loop will change. Now let's talk about XPath. XPath is a query language for XML content. This is a standard and global language. This doesn't matter if you work with Microsoft technologies or Oracle or Java or everything. You can use XPath for querying XML data. For example, if you consider this XML content, here we have XML meta tag at the first, then we have a node which is bookstore. Inside that bookstore we have different books. Each book, these are different books, each book contains different elements like title, author, year and price, and each of these inner nodes might have attribute like language here, or they might have a text. So this is kind of XML structure, and how we can use XPath to query this. I'm not talking about XPath in this tutorial video. This needs another series of tutorial videos for XPath. Here just I put some samples to show how it works. For example, if we want a list of all books here, we can say /bookstore. /bookstore means that we start from the beginning, the root of XML, and then we go into the bookstore, and then we go into the books. So this will return all books. If we want title of a specific book, we can say /bookstore /book. Here we can mention that which book we want to go with, and this is the index actually. And /title, this means that we will get title of a specific book. If we want author of books with price greater than 30, we can put a condition here. We can say /bookstore /book and say price is greater than and equal to 30, and give me the author of that book, which actually will returns this one, because this is greater than and equal to 30. There are many samples of XPath that you can explore more in W3 schools with many tutorials and examples. In Nodelist Enumerator, we can have 4 different enumeration types. The first one is Navigator. Navigator is working based on .NET XPath Navigator, which actually use .NET Object Library to loop through actually an XPath generated list of nodes and attributes. A node will loop through the XPath provided string and returns all nodes that qualify in that XPath. Node text loops through based on XPath again, but the difference between this one and the previous one is that this will return the text, not the node. So this will return an XML node, but this will return a string. And the last one is element collection. Element collection loops through elements and nodes that provided based on the outer XPath, and then fetch data based on the inner XPath query. So in element collection we have two actually kind of XPath string. In this video I will show you a sample of using element collection, which use outer XPath and inner XPath together. What we will do in the sample is that we will get list of soccer teams that played in FIFA 2010. We fetched that from a web service. Then we want to loop through a list of team names. This team's name provided as a result of that web service, which is actually XML. So we want to loop through that XML, through that team names, and then call another web service that the second web service actually provides the full details of each team. For example, name of coach, name of goalkeepers, all other details. And then we want to create a specific XML file for each team based on the name of each team. The second variable, the second web service actually accepts the team name as an input parameter. Okay, so let's go to a sample. I create a new SSIS project. I create that one in my documents folder. I name the solutions as containers and name of project as Nodelist Enumerator. Okay, here I have a SSIS package and I want to use a web service task to call the web service. The web service task that I use in this example coming from xmethods.net. In this xmethods.net there are some free web services. For example, I use this one, which is for World Cup Football 2010 Championship. As you can see, each web service has a WSDL file. I was talking about how to work with web service task in previous videos. One of the videos that was about web service task, so I do not talk about web service task that much here. I just use it. I copy that WSDL file, then I bring a web service task here. I name it as fetch teams, fetch all teams. Then I create a HTTP connection to that WSDL URL. I test that connection, succeeded. Okay, and I should set a WSDL file for the result of that. I create an empty file here. I name it as FIFA 2010 WSDL. This is an empty file. Now I say overwrite WSDL file, which is web service definition language, and then I download WSDL from the path there. Okay, this downloaded. I go to input. I choose service. There is only one service named info. Then I choose methods. As you can see here, there are many methods. For example, cities, teams, all midfields, that sort of information. So the one that I use for this is teams. This will return an array of teams with actually name of the team, flags, their ID, their link, that sort of thing. I set an output to a file for now, just to show you how the result XML look like. So I create a a file in output. I put that again in documents folder in Nodelist. Create file, sorry, in Nodelist, and I name that file as teams.xml. Okay, that's it. I just run this package to get the list of teams there and show you how that XML looks like. Okay, this completed. Now I go to that directory. I open this with Notepad++. Notepad++ is good tools for viewing XML data. Okay, this is the XML data that generated based on result of that web service. We have a main node, which is array of team info, and then inside that we have different nodes or elements. Each of these nodes actually is a team info, and each of these contains an ID of a team, name of a team, for example Croatia, and country flag, Wikipedia URL, and greater flag actually. For example, Denmark, England, different countries. So what we want actually, we want to fetch these names in our loop structure. So as the content here is XML, it's better to actually loop through this XML rather than loading this first into database and then loops through that database. It's better to loop directly from here. So what I'll do here is I create a Foreach Loop container. After the web service task, I changed this to put the output into a variable. I create a variable in package. I name that variable as teams, and I set that variable as object. Okay, so the result of this web service task will be loaded into the variable, the teams variable, which is an object type. Then I go to for each loop. In the for each loop, I name it as loop through teams. Then I go to collection. Here is where I change the collection to Nodelist Enumerator. When I choose Nodelist Enumerator, you can see here that there are different configuration here. First, I can set the document input. Document input is actually the XML content. We can set XML content as input string with a copy paste, or file connection and point it to a file, or using a variable. We want to use a variable, and our source variable is actually teams variable. Now we can have different kind of enumeration here. There are 4 types of enumeration. If you recall from my previous slides, it was about how we want to fetch this data. For example, for this example, we use element collection. In the element collection, I can loop through each element, and inside each element I can say that, okay, which parts of this element I want to fetch. Okay, what I want to do is to loop through each elements, which is each team info, and then inside each team info I want to fetch the name variable. So here I go back here, and when I choose element collection, I have outer XPath and inner XPath. Outer XPath is the XPath string that I write to loops through to find elements. For example, I want to get all elements that are direct children of array of team info. So I go back here, /, this means from root, then this is our main and then I say star. Star means that return all elements under this element. Okay, so each of returned elements are actually a team info, which contains all of this information. Now I want to get all elements under this and then fetch its name. So I go here. The inner XML is just star because I want everything there. I can set inner or outer XML as variable or file connection as well, and I can set this as node text navigator or node. Here I just set node text because I want just the text part of it. For example, for this it will be England. So where I set the s name, when I set the configuration like that, this will return 5 elements per each iteration. These are 5 elements, and I can choose them based on the index. For example, this is the second index, this is the first index. So I came here in variable mapping. Here I can create a new variable. I named this variable as ID for the first one, for example. Index 0 go to ID. This means that this is index 0 and go to ID. Then I create another variable as name or team name. And this is the second index. Okay, so that's it. This actually loops through names of each variable. If we want to check it, we can put breakpoints there, but right now, before doing that, I want to create a directory path for the directory that we want to put our files there, because we want to loop through this teams and then call another web service, and in the other web service this will return an XML, and we want to put that XML in a folder here. I name that folder as team full details. Okay, so this is the directory that we want to put the result of second web service here, and I need a file path here which is a string. This file path will be actually directory path plus the file name coming from the team name and then XML under that. So I use a expression task here to generate the file path. In the expression task, I say that file path is equal to directory path plus team name plus .xml. So this will generate actually the file path. As the team name is already empty, so this evaluated as this. But in runtime, team names will be something, and this will generate the XML file. Okay, now I put the second web service here. After generating that file path, I want to set this web service as it looks through the, again, same web service information. So we use same WSDL file. I do not need to download WSDL again. I choose same service, but the method this time is different. I use full team info method. Full team info method returns all information from the team, and it accepts a parameter which is team name. I can set the parameter value here, but I use a variable for that one, and the variable that contains team information is the team name is the team name variable coming from the loop structure. And I want to set the output to a file connection. I want to create the file. Here I just mention a file here, for example, result.xml. I just should mention this, but after that I can configure it to use the file path that we generated here. So I set this like that. I name it as fetch full details, and I rename it as generate destination file path. Okay, now this is the result XML file which I want to actually make it dynamic. So I go to properties of this, I go to expressions, and in the expressions I set connection string of this to the file path variable. Which is already empty. It will be resolved in runtime. Okay, so that's all. I save this. Now when I go to team details here, this folder is empty. I run this package. This fetches all team information, and then as you can see it loops through each team and generates the result here. So each time it's loops through and then fetch the final result. So you can see that the XML data here will be generated and for each country. And for example, if we go through each of this, for example, this is information for Germany, which has coach, goalkeepers, that sort of information. If we go, for example, to Netherlands, or let's go to, for example, England. Okay, you can see that information here are different. So this means that with a simple XPath query, and the loop actually finished here, and these are all teams generated here, 16. With a simple XPath query, we could actually loop through an XML file. It is much easier than actually loading that into a text file, then changing that text file, getting the team info or with some scripts, or loading into database using xquery. So here we can simply just use simple XPath and loops through those elements that we want. We can change that XPath as how actually we like it. For example, if we want to get those teams that involved only in the quarterfinal, we can put some conditions, that sort of thing. So here the profession that we have in XPath will actually helps us to actually provide a better looping structure. So consideration. You can use Nodelist Enumerator with web service task, which actually, as you've seen in the sample, which actually empowers your ETL scenario. You can also use XML task as well, which is very powerful task for XML content. And XPath. The more proficient you gain in this query language, more power you'll have in Nodelist Enumerator. This is because if you be professional in XPath, you can create queries as you want, and then you can loop through any kind of structure of XML content that you have. Thanks you for watching this video.